What's the cruelest thing a stranger, who you never met again, has ever done to you? Some homeless man was standing on a shopping cart, speeding down an SF hill as I stood on the corner staring at him in absolute confusion. He looked at me and yelled, "What the duck are you looking at, nigger?" and continued to jet down the hill at high speeds. I was like 6 years old. I'm so sorry, but this made me laugh so ducking hard. This is a terrible thing to have happened to someone of such a young age, or any age, yet still, visualizing a homeless man riding a speeding shopping cart and calling a 6-year-old out the N-word made me laugh as well. When I was like 8 or 9, I was at the mall with my mom pre-Christmas in December. Power went out and they were giving out hot apple cider. I went to get some. On my way back, a random teenager smacked the bottom of my cup up into my face. I got burned pretty bad, had to go to the hospital. My brother found out who it was shortly after and broke his jaw and arm. Edit. Wow, karma crazy after this post. Love all you awesome people. This made me mad then happy. I dropped $20 while putting money back into my wallet, and the guy who picked it up, looked me in eyes and said, "Thanks cunt, I needed a new jacket." I was just stunned. The amount of the weights that happened in my brain. Edit. Did not get it back. He ran away and I have -3 running. If it makes you feel any better, he probably couldn't get a very good new jacket for $20. When I was 14, I broke my leg and my ankle skateboarding, and I was laying in the car park trying not to cry with pain, and I was shouting to people who walked by, "Please, can you ring an ambulance or can I call my dad? I think I have broken my leg." About 5 or 6 people looked at me and continued to walk on by until one nice lady from the sports center gave me a mobile to ring the ambulance. As I lay there ringing the ambulance with my leg gradually getting worse and worse to the point of making me feel sick, they eventually picked up the phone and told me all their ambulances were busy, so I had to ring my dad and get him to pick me up instead. I thought it was really unkind of people to just walk on when I was clearly in visible pain. Still, it's not as bad as the car crash I witnessed 2 weeks ago where a drunken woman tipped her car going 60 miles per hour screaming and banging the window, where people just took their phones out and started filming whilst one person actually dragged her out. Some dude drove a golf ball at me when I was 9 and broke my collarbone before running off. Joke's on him. Guess who missed school for 2 weeks and ate his fat little 9-year-old ass into an ice cream oblivion? Some random guy in Canada was walking in the same direction as I was and held 4 doors in a row for me, thanking me each time. As New Yorker, I'm not equipped to deal with that. Edit. Auto-incorrect. How are you supposed to respond to that? By apologizing. One time I walked into a bathroom at a friend's house and didn't realize one of their male roommates was getting out of the shower. He takes one look at me and goes, "Wow, you're ducking fat." It ruined my whole night, and I had Dave Matthews tickets. The awesome thing about Dave Matthews tickets is that the night comes pre-ruined. You clever bastard, you sound like every one of my friends, bunch of fish-loving sons of bitches. On Mother's Day this year, my husband and I took our 15-month-old son out for breakfast. He was being a little fussy and I knew he was hungry, so once we were seated I went to get him some food from the breakfast buffet. Pancakes, all good. Went back to the buffet for my own food after getting him situated with my husband, and 2 women sitting nearby said, "What, 1 plate wasn't enough?" Ruined the entire day for me and it still upsets me. Duck those people. I'm just baffled by the arrogance it takes to think anyone wants to hear their shitty commentary on what they assume is happening. One time I was walking to my car after class, university, not high school, and someone drove by me and threw a frozen beverage at me. No explanation. Nothing was shouted or anything. I just got hit with a frozen beverage. The fact that it was an iced cap just made it all that much worse in my mind. For some reason, like whoever threw it must be some pretentious stuck. I had already been having a really bad day, class was bad, I probably got a bad mark on a quiz, and I remember distinctly walking to my car with my head down like Charlie Goddamned Brown and then got hit with an iced cap. I was so embarrassed about the whole thing that this is literally the first time I've told anyone that I got smoked with an iced cap at university. I guess I was embarrassed cause in my mind, I thought, did I do something to deserve it? I'll never know. I got robbed at gunpoint. That was pretty rude of them, to be totally honest. Did he at least let you hold the gun? No, /u/butthole_pleasures is the Canadian in the situation. When I was around 15, me and a friend were walking home from school, and these 2 girls start getting all pretend flirty with us. Being obnoxious, saying they loved us, trying to touch us inappropriately. The whole time clinging to our arms and laughing, like flirting with losers was the funniest thing they could do. Bonus story, I was getting off the train after going to a nearby city, when an old woman asks to grab onto my arm to help her get off the train. I think why not? And allow her to grab my arm. When she is off the train, she leans in and whispers, "I bet you enjoyed that, didn't you?" It was the creepiest thing an old woman has ever said to me. Edit. Wow guys, thanks for all the karma. My misery wasn't for naught. A few months ago I finally worked up the confidence to go out running around my city to lose weight. After a good 5 minutes a car pulls up to the sidewalk and the people inside start yelling things like "It that as fast as you can go?" Or "You running to McDonald's?" I have never went out for a run after that. People are assholes. No, I'm running to your mom's house. I heard she's giving out blowjobs for $1. Come up to me and said they have a friend who can do something about my face. I took down the number to be polite. For real? Yeah, I was told that maybe they thought they were genuinely doing me a favor. Forgive any weird wording or grammatical errors in the following passage. I've got a pretty bad cold and am not as clear-headed as usual. I'm a left leg amputee. Generally, people are pretty cool, and at most just ask how I lost my leg, which doesn't bother me. One time about 8 or so years ago, I was walking into my apartment and tripped over one of those concrete parking blocks. There were 3 girls in the apartment across the street sitting on their balcony drinking who started laughing and making fun of me. They said shit like "Learn how to walk, you worthless freak, and go grow your leg back and learn to walk." I was wearing shorts, so that's how they could tell I was missing a leg. It really upset me. Like, I lost it in a way that is very uncommon for me. I was so frustrated that someone would ever say that shit to anyone. I was even more pissed off that they were women, not dudes, so I wasn't really in a position to go confront them too much, because I definitely would have hit a dude. I went inside and broke down completely. I'm still not really sure why. I'm not an overly sensitive person, and definitely don't cry over things like that. I think I was just in total shock that people like that exists. As I said, I don't mind at all if people ask how I lost my leg. You would not believe, however, how many people so confidently assume that I was in the military and lost it in the war. I've had people just walk up to me and thank me for my service. What's worse is the sense of disappointment people seem to have when I tell them that I had bone cancer when I was 17, and that's how I lost it. If you're interested, ask, but please don't just assume shit like that. I wish people gave a fraction of the percent about childhood cancer as they do about the military. Years ago, I was out on a date with a lady. We went to the bar where we both frequented and a very large, linebacker, man began to push his way into our conversation. It wasn't long until I was completely out of the picture, as this guy was huge and in front of me. It was getting time to go, so I took my lady friend by hand to let her know that we were leaving, and that's when things got really interesting. Before I knew what happened, I was thrown across the room and that goddamn behemoth was on top of me with a fist in my forehead, yelling all sorts of insults, none of which I can really remember because my head was too busy bouncing off of the floor like a bouncy ball. Anyway, I never saw that guy again. He was a USC defensive line, player thing, and that was his girl that he had his eye on. The guy was alpha as duck. Steroids much? I've never been shoved/hit/thrown so far and hard/fast/repeatedly in my life. However, the best part of the whole story was that I still got to go home with the girl, take that USC linebacker player guy. TLDR, I got my ass handed to me by a linebacker, still got laid. Wonderful story my brother told me. A builder he worked with told him how he had made a bet with a friend that he could floor a particular chap with one punch, whilst on a night out in Blackpool. He punched the guy, who then didn't get up, but his friend wouldn't pay out on the bet because he thought they were talking about the bloke behind him. That evening my brother tells this story to his housemate, who then tells my brother about a friend who was in a chip shop queue in Blackpool when someone punched him for no reason. He had concussion and had his jaw wired. Some people really are terrible. I think the lesson here is don't punch random people. I have really low blood pressure and I have fainted a few times and lost consciousness. It's the scariest thing I've ever experienced, to be honest, because I feel completely out of control and I just come to and realize that I was out cold. It recently happened to me at a concert, the day before my birthday, in front of hundreds of people. I was at the merch booth because I knew I was starting to feel faint, and I wanted to get some water ASAP. When I got the water, I started to chug it because I usually only faint when I feel dehydrated. Next thing I remember, I was laying on the ground, with paramedics around me, and terrace water all over me. They were trying to get me to stand, but my legs were too weak and one of the paramedics had to carry me. It was humiliating, but most of all, terrifying. I felt like I could pass out again at any moment. I overheard some girls nearby who had seen the whole thing laughing and calling me seizure girl. I'm not sure why they thought it was so funny, because they don't know anything about me and for all they know, it could actually be seizures. It still makes me sick to my stomach thinking about it. I was 8 months pregnant with my daughter. I was driving home from work late at night in my old beat-up pickup truck. At the time, my husband and I lived about 20 minutes up into the country. I started heading home when my truck popped a tire. I got out my crappy prepaid phone to call my husband, who was at home and could come get me if he asked the neighbors. We only had the truck. Sadly, my phone got no reception. I started to cry because I was at least 10 miles from home and it was close to midnight. I started walking. As I was walking, these idiot teenage boys drove up on me, yelled out "whore," and threw their drinks at me. I couldn't believe it. What made it worse is that they kept doing it. They would turn around, drive back and yell out "bitch" as well. Finally they left me alone. I was crying so hard and could barely walk. I finally got to a house with the living room lights on. Thank goodness the guy answered his door and took pity on me. He gave me a ride home that night and refused gas money. "I've heard about you. No wonder everyone says you're an asshole," said to me after I accidentally knocked her drink over her in a goth club. I was relatively new to the scene, immediately freaked out, went home early, and refused to socialize with anyone from my previously burgeoning gothy friend group for about a year. Once I'd crawled out of my hole, I talked to said gothy friends about that super mean girl who showed up one night, and they all agreed she was just trying to duck with my head. So I spent a year avoiding people who liked me for little to no reason. Karma's a bitch though. Apparently she got too drunk, fell down the stairs in massive stompy boots, broke her ankle, and was banned from the premises for attacking the people who tried to help her up. Wasn't directly to me, but I felt extreme second-hand cruelty. My sophomore year of college I walked into my last final for the year and sat down. It was the buffering stage where everyone is doing their last-minute studying while waiting for the professor to walk in the door and hand out the exam. I sit down at a desk in the back and take out my notes to go over some vocab. Suddenly this girl in the front row, I have never met her before, I think she was foreign, very quiet, stands up and starts spinning around in circles muttering some words nobody could make out. Everybody is staring at her in shock, as I don't think most of us had even really noticed her in class before. She then abruptly drops to the floor and starts having an aggressive seizure. Everybody is in shock and I hear a bunch of people start laughing, hooting and hollering, yelling stuff like "damn, that bitch's brain stopped." I've never been so appalled in my life by the cruelty of a human being. She was lying on her side convulsing, hitting her head on the desk in the process. I realized nobody was doing anything, so I ran over, threw the desks away from her, Hulk car throwing style, put her on her back, head in my lap, and started yelling for someone to call 911. Fortunately that's when the professor walked in. Imagine that being the first thing you see when you stroll into work. Campus police and the paramedics arrived and took the girl out on a stretcher. I finally began to catch my breath and I realized that there were more paramedics helping someone else. Turns out when I threw the desk to help the girl, it hit one of those kids who thought the whole thing was hilarious right in the side of the head. The girl was fine. Apparently she had epilepsy, so she was used to having seizures, and I went home feeling pretty heroic that day. Gave my brother a free personality test, then coerced him a week later to take out a second mortgage on his home to get treatment for unspecified conditions. They followed him to the bank to make sure the transaction went through. I'll give you 3 guesses which organization did this. Wow man, I'm a little spaced out today though, so I couldn't possibly guess who. I guess my operating theta must just be too low. I was at the bowling alley with some friends. I went to the concession counter and got some M&Ms. As the guy at the counter handed them to me, this guy that was the approximate shape and size of the Hindenburg goes, "Don't you think you shouldn't eat so much? Men like me don't like fatties." For some context, I was in 8th grade. I was 5 feet 5 inches and 120 pounds of TKD 6-packs and thigh muscle. This 30/5-year-old dude that had obviously never thought not to eat so much was telling a 13-year-old what men like him do and don't like. If anything, he convinced me to never stop eating. Being the totally hardcore 8th grader that I was, I just gave him a "you're gross" and dumb stare while popping some M&Ms into my mouth. Silver lining, The concession guy said he couldn't be treating customers like that and that he should go back to the bar area. When I was really young, I used to live in an apartment block. There were other kids that also lived there, and there was usually a group that played together just outside on the grounds of the apartments. Anyways, I wanted to go play with them one day, and this one kid went and scooped a dustpan full of dirt and dumped it right into my eyes. Nevertheless, I didn't see that one coming. /r/pocket sand. I do not know. I thought someone just threw up, but it came down all at once like a slap, and the cup bounced next to me afterward. I got pregnant when I was 17, and as I'm sure you can all imagine, this was a really tough time for me already. I was walking in the neighborhood where I lived at the time in broad daylight when a car full of guys pulled over next to me and shot me 5 or 6 times with paintball guns and drove away. I was 8 months along at the time, so they could clearly tell that I was pregnant. They luckily did not hit my stomach, but they got my back and chest and arms. It broke the skin and I had some really bad bruises. I had to lay down in the grass for a while before I could walk home. Thanks for listening to another episode of Reddit X. Subscribe and activate the notification bell so you won't miss any stories. Feel free to share your own stories below in the comments. Have a good day.